my hot take on it is that you can eat whatever diet you want as long as your other biomarkers are optimal and in check, because always it depends on the individual what you're eating.
When you look at what's happening in the future, are you bullish on the direction we're going on? And a lot of my references, again, Euro Ferrari, Homo Deus, that the idea that we're going to have superhumans that are enhanced, and then you're going to have people that just are not really fussed about doing that. What are your predictions? Siim Land is a globally renowned biohacker who has spent over a decade exploring how to optimize his body and mind. Through science, discipline, and data, he's redefining what peak human potential looks like in the 21st century.
Well, it fundamentally starts with the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle: sleep, exercise, diet, and the environment. Just fixing those things is the first priority. You could take a bunch of supplements or a certain medication, and you can see improvements in your health by doing that. But as a long-term solution, it's more important to focus on.
Siim, what is your biggest fear?
Well, the world's biggest problems come from.
The future of longevity is being shaped in Geneva this October. The Global Longevity Summit is an intimate gathering at the Genolia Innovation Hub, running from October the 28th to the 30th, with pioneers like Aubrey de Grey, Matt Kaberlein, and Amy Killen. I am grateful to be joining as an advisor. And if you would like to be there too, you can get 10% off tickets with the code Beyond Tomorrow. Just check the description for the link. I'll see you there. Siim, why do you think someone should tune in and listen to our episode today?
Well, I presume we'll talk about longevity and life extension. So, these are very thought-provoking and interesting topics, at least for me. Yeah. So I think people will get some, insights from this episode as well.
I was chatting to someone earlier today, and they said that you were on the scene, because you're 31, 32, right? You were on the scene with longevity and biohacking, like 10 years ago or something crazy like that. Like, was there a moment in your youth when you were a teenager where you were like, wow, this space is super interesting and I want to dive in? And why? Why did you get in?
I was into more like fitness and sports in high school and after high school. And at some point I started focus more on preventive health because I don't know, like at some point I realized that my grandfather died to colon cancer when he was 36. And it's obviously very early, and I didn't want to follow along the same path, and it doesn't apply to cancer, it applies to any other things as well. So health is, more than just, exercising and being fit. It also has a lot of other components, and I just wanted to pivot towards that a little bit. I was also studying anthropology at the time, and as an anthropologist, I was interested in the human evolution and where do we come from and where are we going. So in the field of health, there's a lot of opinions about the future of human lifespan, that we might be eventually able to extend human lifespan by hundreds of years. So this obviously is anthropologically very interesting question. Yeah. And as a science problem, longevity is one of the hardest problems to solve. So humans have been thinking about death since pretty much the birth of our consciousness, pretty much, and we've never solved it. There's obviously always been interest in death and longevity. You can find it from ancient societies, different magic spells or stuff like that to try to extend lifespan, different potions, and alchemy as well was a form of biohacking and life extension, like attempting to do that. So it's just something that humans have always been interested in, and it's the hardest problem to solve. So as an anthropologist, I'm interested in the idea of life extension, and the scientifically, I think I decided to dedicate my attention to that because it is the hardest problem to solve. So weight loss is relatively easy, and with things like Ozempic and GLP-1s, you can see that it is pretty easy to solve as well. If people aren't able to adhere to just a healthy lifestyle or a healthy diet, so those things will be solved much more easily than aging and death. So that's why I just decided to focus on that.
The elixir of youth has been a pursuit, as you said, for so long. Cleopatra used to bathe in donkey's milk, thinking that it would make her skin more radiant. You said beforehand that you were very interested in where humans came from and where they're going. According to Siim Land, where have humans come from and where are we going?
Well, obviously, we came from the savannah, or Africa is the current theory that humans originated from hominids and spread across the globe. We adapted to our environment, and that is the main characteristic of humans, that we are able to adapt to many different environments, and that is the reason we have been so successful as a species. We can adapt to the savannah, we can adapt to the cold, we can adapt to the rainforest. So we're able to live in pretty much any climate on the planet. And you can also see a lot of diversity in their lifestyles and even like diets. You have people eating very different diets. And so it just highlights that the main characteristic of humans is adaptation, that we're able to adapt to our environment. And one of the main characteristics of humans is what's called niche construction. So we're able to create our own environmental niche to our advantage. So like beavers are also able to do that to a certain extent. They create, they can literally transform the environment with their dam building, etc. Humans take it to a much bigger level. We create cities, we, create. Netherlands and Denmark are a pretty good example of that, like creating dams and literally pushing back the sea to create livable land on. So humans are able to create our own environmental niche. And when it comes to evolution, then there's always like thoughts about ancestral living and ancestral diets, but it doesn't work like that. Evolution doesn't work like that, that humans are like a stagnant species, that this is where we were in the past, and this is how we're going to be in the future. Like, we're literally evolving as we speak, and that our evolution is determined by our environment. We are molded by our environment. And obviously the environment can like force itself onto us, or we can also deliberately change our environment to lead us towards certain adaptations. So rather than us being stagnant, we're constantly evolving. And because our environment is nowadays much more different than it was even like 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, then that also warrants different requirements for our physiology, or different things we need to focus on. A great example of it is the dramatic increase in average life expectancy over the last 100 years. So even 100 years ago, the average life expectancy, even in Denmark and European countries or developed countries, it was something like 50 years. Obviously, it was because of high birth deaths or infant mortality, high rates of infectious diseases, etc. But we've managed to overcome that because of reducing the rates of infant mortality and improved hygiene, improved medical standards, and those kind of things that have enabled us to enable people to live, let's say, to reach their maximal lifespan slowly.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And I'm sure you've read many of Yuval Harari's books when he talks about the reason why Homo sapiens have evolved into the dominant species in this world is the ability for them to connect and build networks and to thrive, in social settings, right? I would love, first of all, to look at the human story so far, and through your work, how you implement what you've learned from anthropology into your day-to-day. And I think it's important to say N of one, like you are going to be different to other people, but I know that you help coach others on their health journeys. And the reason why I want to go deep into this is because one of the big things around diet, it's such a big conversation. We've had pro-carnivore, pro-vegan, pro-fiber people on the podcast, all basically saying different things to one another. What is your opinion on the research that you've done in yourself, but also as someone who studied anthropology, on what how every human should approach their diet?
First of all, if you look at ancestral tribes across the world, you can find the same amount of diversity in there. So some are 95% animal-based, others are slightly more plant-based. There's obviously no complete vegan ancestral tribes out there, but that's besides the point. It just highlights the huge diversity in diets as well across the world. So, and the diet is determined by what's available in their environment. So humans are clearly omnivores that we're opportunistic eaters. We eat anything that we can get our hands on, pretty much. And there's no, like, let's say, carnivores eat meat because that's what their biology is designed to do. Humans are able to eat a lot of different foods as well. So we clearly have mastered the ability to create food from so to eat like a very diverse diet, and it also is something that our body can adapt to. So if someone is, let's say, more sensitive to certain plant foods, then it doesn't mean that applies to everyone. I personally can eat anything. I can eat gluten, I can eat dairy, I can eat fish, eggs, tomatoes,
meat, red meat.
I mean, I can eat anything. I don't have any allergies or sensitivities.
But do you?
Yeah, I mean, I eat a very diverse diet. Yeah. So someone else, they might be sensitive or allergic to peanuts or eggs. So for them, it can be even literally lethal. So it doesn't mean that, peanuts or eggs are inherently harmful. It's more so about, okay, what suits that particular individual.
Yeah.
And, with looking at the research, then, my hot take on it is that you can eat whatever diet you want as long as your other biomarkers are optimal and in check. So someone eating, let's say, because always it depends on the individual, what you're eating. As I said, just in the example of allergens. Someone eats eggs, they're allergic to eggs, they get a very bad reaction to eggs. Doesn't mean that eggs are bad. And you can apply the same thing to tomatoes, peanuts, fish, there's a lot of different allergies out there and sensitivities. Yes, and there are certain anti-nutrients in plants, but they're not always a bad thing. Let's say phytic acid, it binds the minerals. It doesn't, mean that you're absorbing zero minerals from your food or something. It might reduce some of the minerals. And, there are minerals you don't want in excess either. Like excess iron can be harmful, excess phosphorus can be harmful, excess zinc can be harmful. So it's not that you just want to mega dose vitamins and minerals all the time. Some of the binding might actually be beneficial. Excess iron is associated with increased heart disease. And chelating a high iron has been seen to even extend lifespan in animal studies as well. So it's not that kind of black and white. And even then, these specific anti-nutrients also have other beneficial effects, such as phytic acid might even help with cancer. Obviously, these polyphenols, they are very researched to show various health benefits for metabolic health, inflammation status, and the different epigenetic effects on these DNA methylation, and seen to lower biological age scores as well in certain animal studies.
If someone was to come to you today saying, Siim, I want to sign up for what you offer, what are the first, let's say, 3 things that you would do for them?
Biggest thing that I emphasize is becoming aware of your health status. So it's important to be aware of, okay, where do you sit at in terms of the general population, and health has a big subjective component. You feel if you're healthy and you feel if you're unhealthy and sick, but the health is also something you can quantify. You can measure your blood markers, you can measure other biomarkers, you can measure even your mood if you're interested in that kind of thing. So you can put a number on it as well, and you can scale it. So just becoming aware of what does your blood markers say about your health, and what other biomarkers you can look at to see. And it's not perfect science, but there is a pretty strong science about certain biomarkers and future risk of chronic diseases and potentially lifespan as well.
So you've looked at their biomarkers. And then what are the next few steps? Like, the reason why I ask this is, how many people have you worked with in this kind of context?
I've worked with over 500 people.
So, and the reason why I ask that is the pattern recognition you start seeing. Having worked with many people, what are the next steps that really work on getting people to, lower inflammation or improve certain biomarkers as well?
Well, it fundamentally starts with the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle: sleep, exercise, diet, and the environment. So just fixing those things is the first priority, because you could take a bunch of supplements or certain medications, but and you can see improvements in your health by doing that. But in a as a long-term solution, it's better to more important to focus on the fundamentals. Because then you have to, also take fewer supplements and take fewer medications, and you're just checking the box for some of the low-hanging fruit, things like sleep and daily movement. So figuring out, okay, are you moving enough? What's your diet like? Are you eating too much processed food? Are there certain foods you're not reacting well to? How's your sleep? Are you chronically sleep deprived? How's the quality of sleep? Are you getting sleep apnea? Figuring out those things can be very powerful.
Where does stress and kind of the mindset fit into this? Because people always say that you've got to do the foundational stuff, the easy stuff, but sleeping well, eating well, and exercising, they're actually much harder, doing consistently, than a lot of people give credit to. It's like in this space, they're like, you've got to just do the basics right, but the basics are hard to get right. Is there something that people need to get over, especially with the mindset, to motivate themselves? Have you seen that with your clients? Is it accountability? Is it something there?
Accountability certainly is a motivating factor. So if someone does it together with a group or as a challenge with others, they tend to have a bigger motivation to do it. But ultimately, you can't really, force people to do things that they don't want to do, especially over the long term. You might be able to do it for a few weeks, but if they don't have a really big reason or why to do the healthy things and the fundamentals, then they're not going to stick to it either. So it comes down to figuring out your why. Why do you want to do it, and what's your main goals with just healthy lifestyle? For most people, it probably has to do with not getting a particular chronic disease. Maybe their parents died to some disease, or their grandparents died to some disease. So that's a motivating factor, that I don't want to get it myself. It can also just be that you want to spend more time with your children and grandchildren later in life. So just figuring out what is the biggest reason you would want to stay healthy, finding this reason why to do it. And the research on purpose in life and having a why is also shown to be supportive of living longer.
Absolutely. It's funny because I was doing these hierarchies at a 3 in London and in Valencia, and I was looking great. And then all of a sudden I had other interests in life, and I've just seen my fitness completely shift, and my why kind of disappeared. And so the why has kind of shifted. And I work with a coach, and he tells me, not a physical coach, more of a mental coach. And he says, look, how you look is important for what you do as well. So you really need to incorporate your physical exercise into your work day as if it's like a meeting that you have, because it's part of, as someone who's in getting more into the spotlight, it's something that people judge on, fortunately or unfortunately. And so it's how you incorporate it into a larger purpose as well. And again, the fear of not being able to spend time with loved ones or whatever is a great purpose as well. I know you've done a lot of amazing videos on YouTube just covering all the do's and don'ts and the new trends that are coming into the market. Can you mention maybe 1 or 2 trends that have recently come to the market that you're just I'm going to stay away from this, or you think people should stay away from, or one that you've seen over the past few years?
So in the longevity space, there's rapamycin and metformin are one of the more popular pharmaceuticals people use for longevity purposes. I think personally, it's a bit too early to say if they will have longevity effects in humans. Rapamycin has been shown to have consistently life extension effects in animals, but I wouldn't feel that comfortable taking it myself yet. Yeah. Maybe in a few years, there's going to be some studies on dogs done by Matt Kaeberlein that will possibly show what are the effects of rapamycin on companion dogs. So I'll be able to make a more educated decision based on those results. So I'm at an age where I don't need to take it yet. I think I have few decades of free time in terms of low risk for mortality. So I'll be able to wait. But if someone is, let's say, in their 80s, they have significantly less time to wait. So maybe the risk for them might be worth it, but it's still something that they need to assess.
You make such a good point, which is if you're really under the age of 45, 50, and people like Matt Caberline have told me this on the podcast, it's like there's really no point in experimenting with these things that are yet to be proven. And so I think of the, I don't know how many thousands of people that take rapamycin, most people that I've asked are pretty much in their 50s, 60s, and are willing to take more of a risk. Is there anything that you're, for example, I was at the Health Optimization Summit recently in London, and you get things like hydrogen water taking off and other kind of biohacking kind of ideas and products. Are there any that you would recommend our listeners just to stay away from?
Well, I wouldn't say maybe stay away from, but just not fall into the hype. So maybe methylene blue is an example of that has become popular over the last year. And methylene blue, again, can be quite useful for some situations. Based on research, is most beneficial for mitochondrial dysfunction. Perhaps some conditions like Alzheimer's or some other conditions characterized by mitochondrial dysfunction. In those situations, methylene blue can be useful, but otherwise healthy people have much less to gain from methylene blue, for example. And, it is a synthetic dye, which doesn't mean that it's inherently harmful because it's a synthetic dye, but it's just, more like unnecessary if you're otherwise healthy.
I agree. On the flip side, like, what are you most excited about? Like, have you created any videos recently that you were like, yeah, the research here I'm pumped about and I really want to share this to a wider audience?
Well, at least not a video, but on Twitter a few days ago, there was a study from China where they injected genetically edited stem cells into monkeys, and that made the biological age of these monkeys reduce, and their organ function improved slightly as well. Now, it wasn't some very miraculous effect. People overhyped the results quite a lot, saying that they just turned old monkeys into young monkeys, which definitely didn't happen. But they did reverse these biological age scores of these monkeys by a few years, which in humans would be the equivalent of something like 10 years. Now, it's not even the greatest reduction in the biological age scores. Several years ago, calorie restriction also showed similar effects in monkeys of lowering the biological age by 7 years. So it's not like a groundbreaking finding, but it is interesting that, I guess, the tool or the methodology they used, where they genetically engineered, if I'm not mistaken, they were actually humans themselves that they genetically engineered and injected into the monkeys. So it's just like a form of technology that could become more applicable in the future as well. So the gene editing they did was with FOXO3A, which is a known longevity gene, seen to extend life, or it's seen to be associated with life longevity in humans as well. So it's just like a first proof of concept that might be used in human clinical trials as well eventually.
So we started with you talking about the human story, what's happened in the past. When you look at what's happening in the future, are you bullish on the direction we're going on? And a lot of my references, again, Euro Ferrari, Homo Deus, the idea that we're going to have superhumans that are enhanced, and then you're going to have people that just are not really fussed about doing that. What are your predictions?
Well, I think it's somewhat inevitable that we will, I guess, evolve in some direction. As I said, we're never stagnant. We are constantly evolving in some direction determined by our environment. So I think that, in the next few decades, we will be, very similar, but in the next few hundred years, we probably will evolve in some shape or form. Now, it doesn't mean that we're turning into robots or something like that, but, these enhancements can also just entail genetic engineering, that you just genetically engineer yourself to be able to live longer. So let's say 150, 250 years or something like that. It's very early to say whether or not it is possible or whether what will happen, but theoretically it is possible. As I said, we're already working on with some gene editing technologies that have like proof of concept to back it up. So I think people probably aren't going to willingly change their physical body, like they're not going to be turning into robots, but they will be able to, okay, I'm going to turn off my gene that increases my risk of heart disease or Alzheimer's, for example. Yeah. Those are kind of things I think people will, over the course of time, will become more acceptable of. And, when it does happen, then technically we will be, you could consider ourselves, like the next Homo, whatever you want to call it, Homo evolutionist or whatever, Homo Deus, as you all know how he said.
It's fascinating because I know we're at the moment at Copenhagen Health Week, and there's a lot of people that are going to be pushing back on the idea of gene editing. We're natural, we should focus on the natural stuff and all that. But when we start thinking about the opportunity eventually, maybe in the next 15, 20, 30 years, to simply turn off something that could lead, a gene that could lead to cancer, heart disease, etc. Then when you start thinking about embryo selection, which some people think will be the greatest breakthrough of this century, then it's an interesting conundrum. I think initially people are going to be very skeptical, very worried. There's going to be huge ethical questions. But I think as more and more people do it and realize the benefits, it's probably going to be a kind of simple move from early adopter innovators to it being more mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, people don't want to get cancer, right? So people don't want to get heart disease, and people don't want to get Alzheimer's. If you can just like reduce your risk of these diseases exponentially, then I think most people will do it just for that reason.
Yeah.
And I think that would be slowly adopted over time. So, they are of embryo selection, etc. That's obviously a bit of a different topic, but when we're talking about chronic diseases, comorbidities that reduce the quality of life and shorten lifespan, then I think that's pretty much, most people will just, want to do that.
You don't wear a wearable. And there's a lot of the top biohackers that are, measured in every single capacity, every organ, every bit of their skin. Do you think the biohacking movement has gone too far in this kind of almost type A obsession around kind of incremental improvements to the point where they can't even intuitively tell what their body's telling them?
Right. Well, I think data can be very powerful, and data can be very useful as well. Whether or not your intuition is better or the data is better, I think that is very depends on the person and which one they prefer. So, some people are just, okay, tell me what the data says and I'll act according to that. Whereas other people's, they want to listen more to their emotions and feelings and then act according to that. Because people are different. Evolutionary speaking, we are different because different personalities and different physiologies served a particular purpose.
Yeah.
ADHD and let's say certain different personality types, they all served some purpose. And there's a reason why we have such a variety of different types of people in the world. Now, it's interesting, in the future, would there be some sort of a natural selection towards certain types of personalities that the personality types that are most successful will become successful in the future? I don't know. So, because I guess the question is there something, which one would be like ethically more, I guess I'll run into
No, I agree. So it's funny because we had this exact conversation with two longevity investors. Sebastian Brunmeier talked about this, and he said, actually, apparently, the smarter someone is, the more, I think, kind or something. They've done some studies, because I really pushed back on him and saying, when we start having embryo selection and gene therapy, which is really insane. I don't know what I think now about embryo selection, because one might deem this intelligent being who is type A to be the kind of optimal human being. But what happens all of a sudden when you have a whole country of people that are exactly like that? Like, are they able to work together and all that? There are so many ethical questions. We've evolved, as you know, as someone who studied anthropology, we evolved through tribes to be different to one another, to sleep differently, to eat differently. And it's so we could actually work together as a tribe. So when we start messing with that, we're literally messing with possibly the fabric of society.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's not something that is forced on. Like, you don't need to track things, right? So you can live a very mindful lifestyle and more, I guess, intuitive lifestyle. So as long as it's not forced on people, then I think it's an issue.
As in the gene therapy or the gene editing, or like the wearables or whatever.
I don't think you will be forced to do that, right? So there's always going to be people who don't want to do that. They don't want to take supplements. They don't want to do anything like that. So that's fine.
But the question is when there's going to be a tipping point. When you think about like the splitting off as people start enhancing themselves. And again, I've spoken to Aaron D'Souza of Enhanced Games quite a lot about this. But when people who don't want to enhance themselves, are we just going to basically have a two-tiered system where you've got people that can all of a sudden work 100 times harder, they can sprint 100 times faster, then it's going to be a really important question to ask. And when you think about freedom of choice versus government, in the same way that governments vaccine and they do whatever, like, is there going to be a point where they're like, well, actually this 63-year-old can't survive in this environment because the world's so fucked right now, they're going to have to enhance themselves? These are big questions, right?
Yeah, well, I think if we're in a state where we can enhance humans in a way that makes the enhancement makes you 3 times more stronger, smarter, faster, etc., then in that scenario, where I think we're already in like a post-scarcity society in that case, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like then you're gonna have things like universal basic income and just safety nets of the society that even if you're not enhanced, you're not going to be homeless or something like that. If that makes sense. That if in a world where you can choose to enhance yourself, that's like a post-scarcity society already, in my opinion.
Apart from the stuff that we've already talked about, what do you do to enhance yourself today?
Well, I think my biggest enhancement is just like my mindset or willpower, that just having the attitude towards improvement, trying to improve yourself and slowly getting better. I think that's the foundation to everything, because you might have excellent genetics, but if you don't have the, let's say, willpower or the work ethic, then you're not going to reach great results either.
Break that down for me. Give me an example of when times are tough, what is the dialogue that is happening in your mind to motivate you?
In my case, I enjoy it to a certain extent. Like, I enjoy the challenge and I find it interesting and exciting, so that in of itself gives me a fuel to keep going. But it's also reminding that if it were to be easy, then everyone would do it, right? So just me doing it makes me worthy of getting the rewards as well of whatever I'm doing. Let's say maybe it's working on a book, right? Writing a book is hard. I personally don't find writing a book hard, but a lot of people do. But there are fruits to writing a book, right? So I still have to put in the work. I have to write it for several months and spend hours doing that. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I know the rewards are also great.
It's so funny you say that, because it's a thing that I say is, when it's hard, celebrate, because that's when people will start quitting. And so the harder it gets, that it's time to celebrate. You give yourself a pat on the back, because people will be quitting, and so you are differentiating yourself in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just a kind of litmus test or a personal test for yourself.
Yeah.
That just doing the work itself can also be rewarding, because you're developing the skills that make you worthy of something that you want, so to say. If you want something but you're not worthy of getting it, then you shouldn't feel depressed or bad about it that you're not getting it because you're not worthy.
Yeah.
So to say, if you want to write a book but you're not willing to write the book, then you're not worthy of claiming yourself to be an author, right? So you actually have to write the book to say that you are an author, or whatever the case may be. Business, entrepreneur, getting a girlfriend, or making some money, whatever the people want, right? So if you're not willing to do the work for that, then you're not worthy of getting the reward either.
I don't think there's anything in life that's, bar a few incredibly lucky individuals, that everything is hard. Anything that is worth it is hard. And I think there's such joy in knowing that you've gone through hardship to get somewhere.
Right.
That's the human journey, right? Life is of the suffering, not the triumph. I think there's a great quote that refers to that. That's super interesting. Away from mindset then, anything else that you think is, the cornerstone of of what makes you different, but also key to how you're trying to enhance yourself as well?
Well, I don't do any, let's say, fringe biohacks. So I don't take any peptides right now. I'm not taking any pharmaceuticals. I take limited amount of supplements.
Like what? What supplements do you take?
I take omega-3s, glycine, TMG.
TMG?
Trimethylglycine.
Okay.
So
which does what?
It's for methylation.
Okay.
So
is?
Methylation is a process of moving methyl donors around and controlling epigenetics. So being beneficial for just longevity generally. I do have slightly a higher homocysteine, possibly from genetics, which homocysteine is a risk factor for heart disease, and the TMG lowers homocysteine, so I do it for that reason. I take astaxanthin for protecting skin against sun damage.
Okay. And that's because you're from Estonia genetically?
I'm Estonian, yeah.
Estonian. And is that, you mainly take that because of the fact that you're from a part of the world where sun affects you more, or is it something that you tend to recommend for more of your clients as well?
Well, I just take it because, the skin benefits.
Okay.
To slow down skin aging.
Yeah.
So, I do think that people, especially from very hot countries, would benefit more from it than I do, but I just take it for the extra layer of protection. And, astaxanthin also has been seen to extend lifespan in mice, in the ITP. So, that's an additional motivation for me to take it, but it's less likely to actually contribute to my lifespan, for example.
Anything else in the supplements?
Melatonin I take occasionally.
I read something that you put out recently about melatonin being beneficial for, is it muscle growth or like exercise as well as like brain health?
That particular study was about taking melatonin before workouts to increase growth hormone. And now that's like one single study, and the increase in growth hormone isn't massive. It was like 157%. And growth hormone isn't going to make you build muscle necessarily, but it was just an interesting study about melatonin's effects on growth hormone. Melatonin also has a very powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits. Helps with sleep, obviously, but I don't take it for the sleep. I take it more for the antioxidant benefits, and not all the time. Yeah, take it occasionally.
Okay, and you take it. So it's funny with melatonin. I've heard So I used to take it, but I'd feel almost like exhausted in the morning. Very drained from it. Maybe it was the type I was taking, and then, I'd start building kind of a, reliance on it. Melatonin is an interesting one. Again, I think Brian Johnson takes 5 grams of it, but is it something that you would recommend widely? And again, I know that your background is different. You're not necessarily doing all the research on it, but I'm just saying anecdotally, and I just want to caveat that for our audience as well.
Well, melatonin is very safe. There's the side effect of maybe grogginess in the morning, but that can depend on the dose. And so if your body's already producing a lot of melatonin, then adding extra supplement might make you groggy in the morning. Yeah. But otherwise, it's very safe as a supplement that doesn't suppress natural production, doesn't lower testosterone, doesn't affect any of those things. It might affect puberty in children, but otherwise an adult, then it has no effects on sex hormones.
Very interesting. Okay, so I know your supplement stack. I know your mindset now. Anything else that you're adding? And then, by the way, it's really interesting that you're not overdoing it with the peptides. You know, both you and I are in our early 30s, and I think this speaks to a lot of people that are probably under the age of 40 right now. I know a lot of my 40-something-year-old friends that are taking peptides, but I think it's probably something that. Do you think it's age dependent now, or do you think it's actually just the case of just getting more research on it and the long-term effects?
Yeah, well, I don't find myself that I would need peptides. I have taken BPC for joint healing, but it's not something you need to take every day, on a regular basis. So I don't find, again, it's kind of a waste of money in my case for most of them. Currently, maybe in the future it will change, but they do have some therapeutic values, peptides. But yeah, depends on the particular condition and the individual.
Very interesting. And so then away from supplements and peptides and all that, anything else?
Well, yeah, I was getting to the point that I'm not using actually any, I guess, biohacking. So I'm doing mostly just natural lifestyle. And the reason for that is that I have a few decades to wait. So I don't want to take unnecessary risk. The biggest tenet in longevity is that don't take unnecessary risks.
Yeah.
So don't do drugs, don't drive without a seatbelt, even possibly don't ride a motorcycle at all, possibly because your risk of dying to a traffic accident as a motorcyclist is significantly higher. Just one example. And the same applies to, experimental gene therapy, experimental peptides, experimental pharmaceuticals, etc. I don't have, I guess the risk to reward ratio is not that great for me right now.
Yeah.
So the evidence for these interventions is limited, and the potential gain is not as great compared to the potential risk. So, but if I was to be like 60 or 80 years old, then it would be a different story. Maybe I would consider gene editing or consider some experimental pharmaceuticals because I have less to lose at that point.
What about creatine?
Creatine is great. I take it occasionally. I don't take it all the time because it lowers VO2max adaptations, so you gain less VO2max from exercise if you take creatine, and I do prioritize VO2max at least. At least I'm not going to take it when I'm specifically training VO2max.
What's your VO2max at the moment?
Well, my best was a 66.
Wow. Okay.
Which is quite high. Right now, I think it's a bit lower. I haven't trained that much. It's probably 58 to 61, 62, something between there.
Damn. I've only got mine checked on Whoop, so I won't tell the audience my VO2 max, but it's dropped down significantly this year. And it really brings to question something I want to talk to you about is like how we balance this, how we balance the mindset, the loving kindness to ourselves, being kind to our bodies, being kind to our hearts, being kind to our souls, and also trying to train a lot and eat healthily and go to bed on time and to be social and do all these things. I think finding that balance is really hard. I think this year, I know actually this year, I've never been kinder to myself. And actually my life has been so rich. My VO2 max has dropped down considerably. Do I think I will live less because of that? I don't know. There's definitely more purpose in my life. There's definitely more community and love and all of that. But it's like, okay, how do we find the right balance? How do you find the right balance? How do you motivate others to find the right balance as well?
Yeah, well, mental health and social health are very important components of longevity. There's a lot of research about mental health and relationships being supportive of living longer, or it's associated with longevity. But I think, physical health is the foundation to health. You can have the best relationships in the world, but if you're smoking and you're doing drugs, etc., then you're still cutting your lifespan short.
Yeah.
So, but vice versa, if you have super fit body, super fit blood work, but you're feeling depressed and lonely, then that will also shorten your lifespan. So there is a balance we need to strive towards. I don't think people need to be some elite athlete, but you need to be adequately fit So you need to have decent health and not be obese, not be with a BMI of over 30 or 35, something like that. And not have high blood pressure, not have diabetes, and those things, the fundamentals. Do you need to have some perfect blood work? No, you don't need to have like all the blood markers optimal. They need to be decent, and you need to not have any particular chronic disease. And vice versa. You don't need to be some crazy social person, that like a social butterfly or something like that. But you do need to have, I guess, this is very subjective. Some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted. So the amount of socializing needed for health varies between people. Some people need less, some people need more. But I guess you want to feel that you're not lonely, and you want to feel that you have adequate social support if needed. So it's not about actually being cuddled or being directly supported. It's about feeling that you have the opportunity to get that support if you were to ask someone.
It's such an interesting question. So my ancestry is, I've got, Middle Eastern, Mediterranean ancestry, right? And so I feel again, we have extroverts and introverts in every single tribe and society, so it's different, right? But it's a super interesting question. Like, what does it mean to be lonely? And I'm sure it varies in different environments and cultures. Although it's very clear there are certain cultures that are just more lonely, and I think that's maybe been something that's happened over the last few decades with social media or shifts in culture and all that. But I can say when I go to Mediterranean countries like Greece or Lebanon, the appetite for socializing and that kind of cohesion culturally is so strong. And it's, I don't think it's any coincidence that these countries also have some of the highest life expectancies, despite having high rates of smoking, potentially high rates of, and again, I think life expectancy is different to health span.
Yeah, I mean, it's with social relationships, it can also be that you're less likely to, let's say an old person who's alone, they fall off the stairs, there's no one else to call the ambulance, so they might suffer more. Whereas if you live with other people around you, first of all, you're happier, of course, that's important, but there's also just the physical aspect of someone is going to call the ambulance or someone is going to help you get off the floor, etc. So there's that component that is hard to measure, but important. And just social communities, religious communities, just local communities, all things do also motivate healthier behaviors to a certain extent, that you're more likely to follow slightly healthier behaviors if there's others around you doing the same, and you're more motivated to want to be healthy as well.
What's one thing that you want to share with our listeners that they might not know? Given that a lot of our listeners really, they have a strong base in understanding what's good for them from a longevity and health perspective.
Yeah, I guess one thing people often don't realize is the importance of I guess progression in health. So let's reverse engineer from death, right? You die. There are reasons you die. Of course, it can be some accidents, some gun violence, or something like that. But in a normal scenario, in most average cases, people die to some chronic diseases like heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, kidney disease, diabetes, etc. So, and there are certain risk factors for these diseases that you can track already early in life. So you can see, okay, are you heading towards diabetes? Are you heading towards heart disease? Are you heading towards kidney disease, etc.? You can see those things already decades in advance. Maybe not decades, but at least you could project decades into the future and see you would have X amount of risk with this set of risk factors right now based on your blood markers. You can also apply the same to the lifestyle. Okay, if you smoke, we know that your future risk of cancer and heart disease is going to be significantly higher compared to someone who doesn't smoke. The same with alcohol, the same with the diet, the same with sleep and exercise. But independent of all those factors, there's the biomarkers that actually mediate the risk. So if you are let's say, eating a very ultra-processed diet, you start to gain weight, you see increase in visceral fat, you see increase in blood sugar, triglycerides, increased blood pressure and inflammation, all those things. These are the biomarkers that actually lead to the particular chronic disease, such as metabolic syndrome and diabetes and heart disease. But if someone were to, eat a processed diet, but their blood markers are optimal, then the risk is, it might not be zero, right? You can't completely understand someone's risk based on blood markers and biomarkers, but at least you know that they're not in an immediate risk of diabetes.
Yeah.
Right? So people can eat the same diets, but they can have completely different biomarkers, and therefore they also have different risks for these future diseases. Someone eats an ultra-processed food diet, they are obese, they are hypertensive, they're pre-diabetic. We know that their future risk of heart disease is significantly higher based on those blood markers, versus someone who eats also a processed food diet, but they're otherwise lean, they don't have diabetes, they have normal blood pressure, they're otherwise healthy. So just because they eat more processed food, yes, their risk might be higher than someone who is eating a whole food diet, but the risk is still lower than someone who is also eating the processed food diet and they're diabetic and they're obese, so to say. So people get caught up a lot with lifestyle per se. Yes, lifestyle is important. I'm not saying that you should eat a processed food diet, you should eat a healthy diet. But between the lifestyle and the disease, there are this set of biomarkers that actually mediate the risk, so to say. You're not going to get diabetes just by eating sugar. You get diabetes if you eat a lot of sugar, plus other things as well that raise your blood sugar and keep your blood sugar chronically elevated and keep your insulin chronically elevated. That's what gives you diabetes. An athlete, they might eat a lot of sugar, but they don't get diabetes unless they're like really pushing it with the carbs. But in most cases, the average athlete, they eat hundreds of grams of carbs a day, but they don't get diabetes because their body uses the glucose. So they have normal blood sugar and they don't get diabetes. But the sedentary person who eats the same amount of carbs, even less, they might even eat half the amount of carbs as the athlete, but they get diabetes because their body doesn't use the glucose. So it's the biomarker that actually reflects the increased risk. And lifestyle is like a future projection of the potential risk. But the actual step is between your current state and a disease state is the biomarkers that lead to that disease state over time. So it's important to just track the blood markers, obviously follow as healthy of a lifestyle as you can, but the actual risk is mediated by the biomarkers, in my opinion.
Siim, what is your biggest fear?
Biggest fear? Well, probably that something bad will happen to my family and wife. So, that's the biggest worry.
I think a lot of people worry about that, right? They worry that it's one of the biggest worries in the world that we live in right now. There's people that say they don't want to have kids, to bring kids into this world. What do you think would be the greatest antidote to the dysfunction, dysregulation, disconnection that we find ourselves in right now?
Well, the world's biggest problems come from scarcity. It's the reason we have, I guess, wars and conflict is because of resources are scarce. The people usually fight over resources. That can be land, that can be minerals, oil, different types of resources, gold, etc. So humans have predominantly fought over resources and land, but it comes down to scarcity. If there was unlimited amount of energy in the world, unlimited amount of food, if we lived in a post-scarcity society, then there would be less motivation to go to war, and there would be less conflict overall as well. It wouldn't eliminate it completely because people would fight over religious reasons, ideological reasons, but you would remove one variable. I think the most common reason for conflict is resource accumulation, and because the resources are scarce, you're more likely to want to take it from other people. So and violence is the way you take it from them. So
it's an interesting conundrum because in many ways people would say, and it really is the question of what scarcity means to people, because many people that have nothing probably see a lot of abundance in their lives, and many that have much, a lot,
Right.
see a lot of scarcity in their lives. It's such a fascinating conundrum that
Yeah,
the
well,
greed,
that is
the greed
absolutely
of
true,
humanity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point you make.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you find infinite energy, for example, then that would lead to a lot of technological advancement, a lot of abundance. It wouldn't solve a lot of social issues, but it would solve, the physical issues of poverty and those kind of things.
Sim, I want to go into your crystal ball. By 2030, in the context of health and longevity and biohacking, the space that we live in, what does the world look like to you?
Well, I think it wouldn't look a lot different. So 5 years is a very short time still, in my
Let's
opinion.
let's do 2035 then,
35,
or 2040.
2040. Well, I think we'll have much better insight into health and longevity. I don't think we'll solve it by that time, but we'll have a lot of more predictive power of someone's future health. Even now you can use a lot of like retinal scans or just the MRIs to detect diseases early with AI, for example. So I think that will just get better. So you'll be able to, first of all, track your biomarkers more easily, and based on those biomarkers, make future predictions to your health a lot more easily. Will we have things like gene editing by that time? I think it will be. I do think that we'll have a few gene editing options that will be probably as available as like peptides are right now, but and a lot more people will take them, but I don't think we'll again solve aging by that time. I think it will take a bit longer for us to really make a dent in human lifespan. But people will be more experimental, and gene editing will become more widespread. It won't be mainstream, but will be a bit more common. And what else? Implants or stuff like that will also become a bit more common. I don't think they're inherently necessary, but some people will use maybe some glasses to like augmented reality glasses, those kind of things to gain an advantage in some area, maybe productivity or work.
In 15 years, by 2040.
Well, yeah, the first successful Neuralink patient was he's had it, I think, for 2 years now. So 15 years, it will be a bit more common. Yeah. Similar analogous technologies.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably more on the conservative side, which is fair enough. It's like, you sometimes get people like, Peter Diamandis, who's been on the podcast a few times and already great, talking about longevity, escape velocity and all that. Do you think someone that is in their early 30s right now could live forever, biologically and physically?
I don't think biological immortality is, it's too complex to solve. I do think that it could be possible for someone in their 30s to live a few hundred years from now. I would put the likelihood of that at like 5 to 10%. I wouldn't put it at like above that, but I think it is possible. So it's just hard to say. A lot of it is based on pure speculation. So there's nothing that indicates we're anywhere close to the longevity escape velocity right now. It's been 20 years since Aubrey de Grey popularized the concept, and as far as I'm aware, we're pretty much in the same spot, maybe a few steps ahead, but we haven't seen any significant breakthroughs over the last 20 years in life extension. And, the greatest life extension in mice was achieved 40 years ago with regular calorie restriction. So we haven't even broken that ceiling over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
So, yes, these changes can happen exponentially. No one knew about AI 6 years ago, and it has made immense progress over the last 5 years. So, yes, it could be a hockey stick, but, I like to base my speculation on, I guess, more real-world data rather than belief.
And on that note, whole body replacement and organ replacement and all that, people say that replacement eventually is going to the thing away from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of repair tools. And for anyone who hasn't heard about this, this is the idea that we'll be able to grow limbs and other parts, organs, etc., and then attach them onto our body. And in the most extreme scenario, actually grow a whole body and simply just put our heads on the body, which is quite a, again, extreme idea. And I think one that a lot of people will be like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? That
Right.
sounds very sci-fi. That's something that people, it's probably going to take a bit longer, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen in 2040, but you know, salamanders think they can regenerate limbs. So you could potentially do some gene editing to also grow your own limbs, etc. I think, yeah, that comes the question of what makes you, where does your consciousness lie? Because, yeah, okay, you replace every other part of your body except your brain. Are you still you? Will you be you, so to say, or will you become someone else? And can you transport memories on a USB stick to another body? I personally don't think so.
Would you?
Well, I don't think it's possible. So there's a good thought experiment, very famous one, is by Thomas Nagel. Like, it's called "What's It Like to Be a Bat," and he claims that humans would never be able to experience what it would like to be a bat. Even if you take your own consciousness, you put it into a bat, you would never know what it would like to be a bat. You would be able to be aware of what it would be like to be a human in a bat. So you would be like Batman. You're a human inside a bat, but you would never actually feel. You would never be aware of what it would be like to be a bat, because once you become a bat, your human consciousness would disappear. You would be the bat.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I think that you could be like a human inspecting inside a bat, but you would never be a bat.
So that's a fascinating.
So I think in the case of this transporting your own consciousness to another body, it would be, if you were to do that, in the process, I fear that your own consciousness would disappear. You would have a new person in a new body with your own old memories, but it wouldn't be you anymore.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I fear.
It's so interesting. It's an interesting kind of approach. And it's the idea. Again, Uri Harari has been quoted too many times in this interview, but the only thing we know as human beings is that we individually are conscious. We are conscious. We don't know anything else. Yeah. So a parting question to our audience. What is one piece of advice you want to leave them with?
So this is what I also think a lot about, and we discussed it already, that, okay, it depends on your age. So I said it's a kind of 5-10% likelihood that, by 2040, you would reach at this tail end of some singularity or longevity escape velocity. But if you knew that, okay, by 2040, the odds is 100%, that if you reach the year 2040 in health, you're going to live to immortality. If we knew that it's 100%, even like 90%, right, then you would just live in your cave and live in your house and never fly, never take any risks, because it's kind of a 15-year marshmallow test. Yeah. You suffer for the next 15 years in very cautious lifestyle, because if you reach 2040, you'll be gaining hundreds of years extra life. So it's like studying right now so that you can have a good life later in life. But like I said, it's 5 to 10%. In my opinion, like some people might say it's 50%, other people's whatever, 40, 50, 60%. So depending on how big of a percentage you put on that, you can, I guess, create your lifestyle. If you think it's 90%, then you need to be more cautious with your life. Don't go parachuting, don't drive a motorcycle, don't do drugs, etc. If you think it's 5 to 10%, then living like a monk might not be worth it, right? Because you might miss out on some other things in life that are worth living for.
Yeah.
So you can be less strict with your lifestyle and enjoy your life. So you need to figure out what is this percentage you think that, okay, by 2040, what will happen? Is it going to be 100% immortality or 5-10%? And based on that, just create your own lifestyle.
Usually, so I would love to know an indicator from you based on that spectrum of whether you're 0 to 100% on your thoughts of the likelihood of immortality. Do you find that the scientists and the academics that are closer to the data are more bullish or more pessimistic? Do you think people that are in AI are more optimistic? Like, what is usually indicating the optimism or pessimism?
But I think people who are the most bullish and most optimistic about it are people in tech. So people in AI, crypto, and just technology, and people who are in biological sciences, they tend to be more like, we need to fund this. We need to actually do legitimate research because they know that we're nowhere close to it. So a lot of tech people are just, taking it as a matter of fact that, just in 5 years we'll figure it out. Like, AI will figure it out in 5 years. But that's a very, what's it called? You're just resting on your laurels, kind of. You're thinking that it's already going to happen with no evidence that we're anywhere close. Whereas the actual biological science guys, the actual gerontologists, they're saying we need funding, we need to do actual research. We don't have any actual legitimate research about this. So there's obviously a lot of different opinions about it, but a lot of it is a speculation. So the truth is we need a lot more funding in this area. We're nowhere close to the longevity escape velocity, and it's not even, well studied even right now. So it hasn't even started. We haven't started to even study legitimately how do you extend lifespan in humans.
Siim, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you. If you want to know what tomorrow has in store like I do, you definitely want to listen to our recent episode where I talked to Peter Diamandis about a future where we could live forever. Thank you so much.